Morgan McGee. Great is his reward. Jews and banking. If you look at the history of global finance, Jewish communities played a massive role in building the early foundation of banking. It wasn't a random coincidence, or a plot, it was the result of very specific cultural strengths meeting severe historical restrictions. It really boils down to four distinct pillars. The first pillar is high trust. In the medieval world, you couldn't just wire money or rely on a central court to enforce a contract across borders. Jewish communities operated as a high-trust network bound by shared honor, deep social ties, and the heavy consequence of communal exclusion if someone broke that trust. Which ties directly into the second pillar, international spread. Because of the diaspora, Jewish families were connected across completely different empires, from Venice to Amsterdam to London. Right. That network allowed them to pioneer the bill of exchange. If a merchant in Italy needed to pay a trader in Northern Europe, they didn't risk shipping physical gold across pirate-infested waters. A Jewish financier in Venice could write a paper draft, and a trusted community contact in Amsterdam would cash it out. They were the original cross-border payment processors. And then there's the legal side, the third pillar, the usury loophole. This is where the religious dynamics get fascinating. The Catholic Church strictly banned Catholics from charging interest on loans, calling it the sin of usury. But a growing economy needs credit to function. While Jewish law forbids charging interest to fellow Jews, it explicitly allows it with outsiders. Catholics' misinterpretation of Scripture left a loophole for the Jews. Completely. Rulers couldn't borrow from Christians, so they actively invited Jewish financiers in to grease the wheels of the economy. But it wasn't just an open opportunity, it was a forced specialization. Jewish people were legally banned from owning agricultural land and locked out of trade guilds. They had to keep their wealth liquid and portable in cash or gems, because if an expulsion happened, they had to flee overnight. This goes back way further than modern banking, right? You can trace this formula straight to William the Conqueror in 1066. When William took England, he brought Norman Jewish financiers over from Rouen specifically to fund his kingdom. Under Norman law, the Jewish population was legally classified as the personal property of the king. They would lend money to the barons and knights, and when William needed cash to build castles or wage war, he would simply tax the lenders. They were effectively a financial filter for the crown. Fast forward 600 years, and you see the exact same pillars at play with William of Orange during the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Which brings us to the final pillar that made all of this possible, language and literacy. While most of medieval Europe was illiterate, Jewish culture mandated that boys learn to read and write Hebrew. So while English, French, or Dutch wasn't the universal base layer of communication yet, these bankers shared a standardized written language. They could write complex legal contracts and cross-border financial ledgers that the local population simply couldn't decipher. But there's a fifth pillar here that people rarely talk about, financial secrecy. To pull off major geopolitical moves, rulers essentially needed to max out their sneaky stats. In those days, a king couldn't just openly raise taxes or move massive chests of gold to buy foreign soldiers without his parliament or his rivals finding out. If a ruler wanted to quietly recruit elite foreign mercenaries, say, Finnish archers or Swiss pikemen, right under a rival empire's nose, he couldn't do it publicly. So the private banking network acted as a cover for covert operations. Exactly. Money moved silently across borders through private letters of credit between trusted family members. It looked like standard merchant trade on paper, but in reality, it was black ops financing. It gave rulers absolute discretion and plausible deniability, allowing them to fund and mobilize armies in secret before their enemies even realized a threat was building.